Welcome back, McFly subscribers. So this is what we're tying today. It's a Muddler Minnow. This one is not tied super great. So these aren't my best ties. I'm not the best at them. I think I've got a few things down which can really help you guys. So a couple weeks ago, I kind of ran out of some ideas of what to tie. So I had asked you all what you recommend me tying. And one of the suggestions was a Muddler Minnow by Huey Graves. 8901. So thank you for that recommendation. So I tried to tie a couple and I wasn't doing super great with them. So I looked up a couple videos, and the one that probably gave me the most insight on how to tie this was from Tight Lines Productions. They have a great video online on that, which I can link in the description section if you want to see that. That one's probably going to be better than what I tie, but here we are. So let's give this a try. You can see kind of how I tie these. All right, we're going to start by placing the hook in the vise. And by the way, this is Risen's 9231 barbless, and this is size 8. We're going to use two different threads here. This one here is a 6/0 in black. Both of them are going to be black. We're going to start the thread. As you can see, we've got a little space in between the hook eye and where I start the thread. That's important for being able to spin that deer hair. So we're going to bring this back. You can snip or snap off the waist, and then we're going to come all the way back to the bend of the hook here, and we'll stop right there, right at the bend of the hook. Next, you're going to want 2 turkey feathers of opposite sides. So you can buy these this way, where it's 2 of them, one from each wing. So one side of the wing, one with the other. And that way you get 2 opposite pieces of turkey wing, okay? And you'll see why we need that in a minute. So right here you can see it's all frayed. So you're just gonna wanna kind of bring those fibers together. I'm gonna make them connected. And one of the major things I got from that Tight Lines Productions is using the razor blade to cut off the fiber. Now, you can measure this, but I kind of am eyeballing it. Now for the back wing here, it's about 6 or 7 fibers. There we go. Now that's a little bit frayed at the end, so we're just gonna stroke those until those fibers are connected. We're gonna do the exact same thing with the other wing. And then as you can see, we've got 2, and they kind of curve towards each other. So we're gonna align them so the curves are even, back to back, where the shiny side is on one side. And this is probably the most difficult part for me. And there we go. So we've got 2 of them on either side. It's not perfect. And the difficulty with this one arises, you can see how there's so much bend in that. It's hard to get them aligned perfectly. So we want a tail that's about half the length of the hook shank. So we're going to take that measurement, and then we're going to wrap this up over. Now, you could just go ahead and tighten that right there. But in that Tight Lines Productions, he said let the bobbin rest and then kind of orient that to keep it from wanting to spin, because it does. So there we go. I'm going to tighten that. And there's the tail. And then we're just going to cut this off at an angle. Don't worry too much about a taper, but put a little one in it. And then we're just going to clean all that up. Now I want to mention the scissors I'm using today. I've got actually 2 different ones. These are by Risen. They're little mitten scissors. I really like them to get in really tight and fine. They got a nice fine point. And the other one for the deer hair are these. They're Fiskars. They're really good scissors. These scissors were given to me by a subscriber, and I like them. They're really good scissors. Those Risens are probably my favorite for getting in tight. Next, I've got a medium-sized Mylar tinsel. And this one is a gold and silver. Silver one side, and it's gold on the other. I'm going to tie it in with the silver showing. And that will make the gold actually be the side that ends up wrapping on. So we're just gonna tie it in like so, come up to the initial tie-in point. And by the way, that tie-in point is about a hook gap is what you're looking for, so roughly. Then we're just gonna start making even wraps up the hook shank with this tinsel. Touching wraps. We want to kind of cover the previous wrap with every wrap, and I don't know what's going on with this tinsel. It's separating. There we go. Coming out better now. All right. Came up, so let's go ahead and capture that. We'll go back a wrap or two to really lock that in. Cut that off. There we go, there's the body. Now we need an underwing, and I think it's squirrel tail, usually. I don't have that. So this is just a rabbit zonker strip that I'm just pulling off a couple fibers of. I'm gonna pull out the underfur. And then we're gonna measure this to come back about to the end of the hook gap here, right there. I'm going to take that, we're going to find that measurement, I'm going to go ahead and cut off that for a nice even tie-in. Now if you're using squirrel tail, it's slipperier, so you'd really have to kind of give a little more tie down right there. So there we go, there's the underwing. So next we're going to get more of this turkey feather, only this time it's a little bit larger of a piece, probably about 8 to 10 fibers. So we can cut it, and you can see I'm going much further in. You can lift it up like so, pull that off, and it's a much larger piece. And there we go, there's the two pieces together. And we are, and by the way, so I flatten this down, give a nice little ramp, and we are going to measure this out, and we want it in between the end of the tail and the end of the hook gap there. So that's where we're gonna place it. And so we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna pull this out, we're gonna rest that, pull this up, and then make sure that this is, kind of work it down, use the weight of the bobbin, really work that down, make sure it's even. There we go. Make a couple tight wraps with it. And there is that wing. And it came out nice and even on top, as you can see. The thing is, sometimes it wants to kick off to the left or right, and that's kind of where this technique of resting the bobbin to tighten that wing down kind of works. Now, we want to make a really good tight wrap before coming in with some super fine point scissors, hence these scissors. And it might take a couple cuts, but we want to really get in tight. Got to put that collar on. So I'm just making a couple wraps here just to cover all that. Now we're going to switch threads. You want a flat thread for this next step so you don't cut the deer hair, but this is the 140 power thread in black. We're just going to start that thread. I'm going to go under the other thread to capture it. Cut off that waist. I'm going to pull that thread back, wrap back over it like so. There we go. And you could use head cement here to lock that wing in place and make sure it won't slip out. That takes time though for it to dry, and I don't like wasting time. So I'm going to use this Solares ultra thin, and I'll show you guys that in a second. I'm actually going to paint it right over the tip of the wing there. That's what this is. Solares bone dry ultra thin. And this is a UV curing resin, so I just hit it with the UV light and it instantly cures it hardens it, and now that wing won't pull out. So we're going to come up a wrap until we're right laying on the bare hook. We're going to get a fairly large clump of deer hair, and for this size fly, that's about what I'm looking at. Okay, so that might give you a reference, but you might have to tie a few. So then we're going to take this stacker and we're just going to stack that hair. By the way, you want to make sure you pull out all the fuzzies. We're going to measure this out. You can see this is extending back to basically the start of that tail. That's about where you want it, roughly. So I'm going to take that measurement. I'm going to switch it over to the other hand. I know where it's at. And I'm going to cut off a little bit of this fiber. I don't need all of it, but I'm not going to cut to that measurement. I still need some because I need to kind of shape that head. So there we go. So I'm going to make 1 wrap and 2 wrap. And then I'm just going to go ahead and start rotating around the hook shank. And you can see I did another wrap there. And we're just going to tighten that. Make 1 more and 1 more. All right, then we can work it up through to lock that into place. Then we can pull all this back. What I'm doing is I'm going to take this, I'm just going to shove it and push, and that kind of pushes it back to expose more of the hook shank. And then I pull everything rearward, make a couple wraps in front of it. Then we're going to grab a little bit more of the deer hair, not as much. Make sure, of course, that we comb out all of the fuzzies. So I've got a little comb here. Butt ends are all uneven. I'm just going to go ahead and cut those so they're even. Turn this around, and we're going to just cut off the tips. We're going to bring this in. We're going to wrap over once, twice, and then just spin that on that hook shank. There we go. We'll come up through and kind of lock that with another nice tight wrap. There we go. So now we can pull everything rearward. We're going to push back a little bit, pack that in. Now they make tools to pack. You're welcome to use them. And sorry if my fingers are in the way, but you get the idea. So basically we're just pulling everything rearward, kind of wrapping back a little bit up on top. All right, and then we can whip finish. Now, I am lucky where I've got a little knot, like a little screw thing here that I can rest the bobbin on. So then I've got 2 hands so I can whip finish. If you don't have that, you might need to half hitch or do a couple half hitches to tie this down. And that secures that. Now we need to make sure that that knot is not going to come loose. So I pull everything rearward like this. I come in with a dot of my bone dry. Make sure you don't get in the hook eye. Then we can cure that like so. Now we can pull all this forward. And that looks messy, but we're going to fix that. So I've got the razor blade now, and we're just going to be careful. But I'm going to kind of cup the razor blade. We're going to come in, right, lay it on the hook eye, and kind of come up and round back like so. We're just going to go all the way around that way. Come up and round back. On the side, we can go up and round back. And this other side, same thing. So we're just basically creating the head here. And then once we get to the bottom, we can just go straight back like so. And that's going to help. So it still looks bad. So we're just going to go ahead and start going in. Now, my issue was I was cutting too much in, which was cutting off a lot of the collar, We want to keep that collar. You don't want to over trim this, but you want to get all those butt ends trimmed off. But definitely don't trim off that collar completely, which I have a tendency of doing. So that looks a little better. I am gonna trim off a little bit more of the collar on the base here. There, and then we can just kind of clean all this up. Little round head, and there we go. There is the finished Muddler's Minnow. It's not perfect, but that should fish. So the best way to fish these, I've fished them quite a bit. I just never really did a whole lot with tying. I've tied them before, but a lot of times I've bought them. They are a little more difficult to tie, but I really like fishing them. And the reason why is these tend to, with the deer hair, they tend to want to kind of rise above the surface, so they want to float a little bit. So they're really good on rivers where you add a really heavy nymph in front of it, or maybe even another streamer, but something to get it down, or add a fair amount of weight and add a good size leader behind it. And then this is the trailing fly. So then once this is trailing, this wants to rise above a little bit. And with the current, it can just sit on the bottom, and that's just going to kind of move back and forth. It's going to bounce around. It's going to look like a little bait fish just like trying to squirm its way through the, the riffles. With the head of this kind of pushing a lot of water, that thing is just going to move around a lot. So it's a really good fly to fish, but you definitely need to get it down. So you need to use some weight with it. So either a heavy fly in front or a fair amount of, lead. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what I did wrong. If you guys have tied a lot of these, I'd love to know kind of what you do. Now, the other thing you could do if you've got this up over the hook eye, I want to mention, is that you could take a lighter and just kind of quickly touch it. There we go. And that's going to burn those fibers right off the eye. We can even use it around the side, and that should even out that. So there we go. Look at that. So that really cleaned that up. Made it look a little more ball-like. Look at that. That looks so much better, guys. Now it's a little dirty now from being burnt, but that'll brush right off. That looks so much better. So you could definitely do that. But be careful, because you could quickly just catch this whole thing on fire and you wasted your fly. So just be careful. But that is something that you could do with a lighter that would make it a little more even. So there we go. If you haven't already, check out my sponsor, Risen Fly. They are the ones that made the hook today. They're the ones that made these scissors. They make rods and reels and a whole bunch of stuff that you could use for fly fishing. So if you haven't seen them already, which if you've been my subscriber for a while, you definitely have. I love their stuff. Having them as a sponsor is a real blessing. I'm really happy for it because they are some of my favorite rods for the money. A whole bunch of stuff you could use for fly fishing. It's all really good prices, guys. Some of the best out there for the quality of gear that they're offering. Best off, they're offering you all a discount. So type in McFly at checkout when you go to www.risenfly.com, and they'll give you 15% off of your first order with them. So that's pretty amazing. So thanks for watching, everyone. If you guys like this kind of content, please subscribe and hit the bell notification for future video updates. Also, if you could hit the like button, it would really help me and the channel out. I will see you on the next video. Now you go catch some fish.